We both gonna be talking into this microphone.
Yeah. So, let me just move it a little bit.
Kind of like the background doo-wop singers.
Yeah, that's right. So,
Do not use that in bloopers or anything.
I was not going to say anything. I was like, should I tell her I'm going to use this? But like, in order to have both of us on the mic, we're like, this reminds me of the premarital counseling that we had, remember?
Oh, vaguely.
We sat knee to knee, and then we shared with each other, and like you said things, and then I had to like repeat what you said.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you mean just say it in my own words? And he was like, no, actually repeat what you... I was like, oh crap, so I gotta listen. Oh. All right. This is the 700th. I have some opening remarks here.
Yes, I saw that little paragraph. I was like, I assume that was probably for you.
Yeah, this is the 700th episode of the Christian Geek Central podcast we're recording this for. And for those listening, to mark the occasion... Are we recording? Yeah, we are. Everything's fine. To mark the occasion, my wife, Holly, has agreed to sit with me for a few minutes and chat while I record our conversation, which is going to be structured around questions that are submitted by you guys. There's about a handful of you that each sent in multiple questions. It was great, so thank you so much for everybody who did that. And I kind of reorganized them a little bit so they kind of fit into topic categories that we'll kind of make our way through. For those who may not know, my wife Holly is the primary reason I am able to give my time to Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central. As genuinely helpful and enabling as patron support has been, my ministry work would end tomorrow without Holly, who since the very beginning in 2006 has continued to work in a job she dislikes so that I can continue in my work while the financial needs of our family are still met. So she is the silent, unseen, pumping heart that keeps SBP and CGC alive. And since the podcast is really surprising to me now, I never would have thought this, but it's been the most consistent and core element of my ministry over the years. And also because she really didn't want to get on camera, it seemed fitting to have her here on the show for episode 700 of the podcast to introduce or reintroduce her to you all. My lady, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. I'm really nervous, just so everyone knows.
But no reason to be. I mean, I'm not going to surprise her with anything that you guys wrote. Maybe I'll surprise her with something. I don't know. Who knows what might be surprising in this. But anyway, she's seen all these questions in advance. But so, yeah, first one is, this feels a little weird, like totally being...
Yeah.
Like leaning right in each other's faces to be on this microphone. Justin D. Myers asks, do you have any geeky hobbies or interests, and what do you do to relax? And then on a similar note, Francisco Ruiz of the Retro Rewind podcast asked, what show or movie do you enjoy that you will put on if there's nothing new you want to watch? So just general kind of like your entertainment interests. Do you happen to have any interests that could be categorized as geek genre, whether sci-fi, fantasy, or anything like that? I mean, by the way, guys, I know the answers to all these questions. Okay.
So you can chime in if I forget something.
Well, no, I mean, not necessarily, but anyway.
Yes, a little bit. I read a lot of fantasy novels, and maybe some sci-fi here and there, but it would be more a mix of sci-fi and fantasy, probably not straight sci-fi. And then also some sci-fi and fantasy movies. I'm not sure if there's anything else.
You also read, like, you could mention some authors too. Like you read usually young adult,
yes,
the young adult fantasy or young adult, occasionally science fiction, right? Mm-hmm. So who would be some like young adult fantasy writers that you've really kind of enjoyed or connected with?
Well, Leigh Bardugo is one of my favorites.
And she would be known for the
Shadow and Bone.
Yeah, which got a Netflix show, which we're about a year away from now. So anytime now, hopefully they'll announce when the new season's coming on Netflix.
Yeah, they're in production for season 2.
Oh, okay.
Filming, stuff like that.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know when it'll be coming. But yeah, and then I mean, it's hard to. I feel like I flop around to a lot of authors, but Marissa Meyer stands out in my head.
What does she have a series she's known for? I'm trying to remember if I've heard that name.
I think I'm gonna have to look this up.
That's all right. People can look it up.
I think she did. I think she's the one that did the series of Cinder. Like they're retelling. They're kind of sci-fi / fantasy retellings of fairy tales.
Yeah. Okay.
Like Cinderella and
That's right. Okay, I remember you talking about these.
Little Red Riding Hood and yeah,
Okay.
Snow White. So
Okay.
yeah.
And does that? I mean, what do you do to relax? Is that kind of stuff, or are there other things that are not entertainment related that you do to relax, or?
Well, Paeter would say, I don't like to relax. Because I'm very much a doer. But yeah, reading books. I like to listen. I listen to a lot of books, a lot of novels. I don't do much nonfiction. It's almost strictly fiction. And more recently, I've been making more time to actually sit down and read books.
Now, why do you find yourself listening instead of reading more often?
Oh, I can. There are some parts of my work that I can listen to a book while I work, and it helps pass the time. It helps keep things interesting. Yeah. So, but then just I like to escape into a novel. So, yeah.
What's a show or movie you enjoy that you'll put on if there's nothing new to watch? So it sounds like something that maybe you've seen already.
Yeah.
Maybe
Most recently, I've kind of gone back to Fixer Upper a little bit. That's Titus and our son, has been watching that with me.
I think you have to because you're an evangelical Christian mom, right? Don't you? Don't you have
Yes.
to?
I think that's part of the requirements. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I don't rewatch a lot of things. I mean, I rewatched Friends, all of Friends, and have those DVDs now. But I usually try to look for things similar than to what I've seen before. Things like British shows about royalty or nobility. Paeter's probably mentioned that Pride and Prejudice is my very favorite movie. The 1995 A&E version, of course.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So that would be, that's a lot of what I like. Or like, yeah.
So what's one place in the world? This is from Dan XL. What's one place in the world you'd love to visit but haven't gone yet?
I finally figured out the answer to that question is there is not one place. I like adventure. I like going places and seeing things and doing things. So I don't really have a specific, like, this is what I don't really have a bucket list as far as vacations or places to see. I just kind of love to see it all and go places and go see new places and things.
I thought a little bit. I see, and that's a little bit different from what I expected.
Yeah.
I kind of grouped that a little bit with the show stuff because I thought you would say, well, actually, we're going to go to England.
Yes, we are, which is very exciting. And I'm super, excited about planning this out and what we're going to see and see the castles and the even just the countryside and just see all these things that I've been reading about and watching shows about. And so, yes, I'm very excited. But, that's probably at the top of the list, mainly because of the books I read and the shows I watch, movies I watch, but also because they speak English
Yeah.
there. And I'm super intimidated to go to a country where they don't speak English. But it's not that I don't want to go to those places, but those would take a little more planning, I think, or
Maybe
something.
stress or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Speaking of bucket lists, are the buckets flying yet?
They have not recently.
I might get, I mean, like, I think that's a question from Francisco Ruiz, and it's a reference to us playing Kaboom, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Kaboom at one of the charity marathon live streams. This one was a year and a half ago, not the most recent one. It was the last time we did Extra Life, I think, was when we had that session of playing Kaboom, which is what is the significance of Kaboom?
It's like my favorite video game, and I used to play it growing up. It was like on Atari.
Yeah, Atari 2600.
Yeah. And so you're not probably going to get me playing many video games, but if you mention that one, I will most likely play.
Although we've got our old school, like, knob things, paddles, whatever you call them,
Yes.
have not been working. So actually on my birthday list this year is if any family member decides to use that, is a new one, like
Yeah.
a new pod, not like a refurbished one from back in the day, but like actually a new one that's been made to work with the Retron 77 I have. So, and if I don't get it for my birthday, I'll probably just buy it. So you guys might be able to look forward to more buckets flying with Holly in the future. But I think that's questions also in the spirit of have you been like in the zone and just like everything's coming together? Because that's how I remember when we had that, when we were playing it. I was like, this could be a metaphor
Yeah.
for just like things clicking in life and
Yeah.
you being really efficient. And so I don't know I don't know which sense he meant it in, but it's open to interpretation. But this one's not. Francisco also asked, pie or cake?
Pie. I would,
What kind of pie?
that's a good question. Pumpkin pie,
Ugh.
fruit pie, like cherry. I like the tartness of cherries, or apple, but not the kind of pies, like fruit pies tend to have like that extra crust on top. If you can make a fruit pie that like, I know your sister Corinne makes an apple pie that does not have that crust on top.
Oh, I like that though.
Oh, you like the crust?
I do, because it softens, it dullens the apple taste, which I'm still warming up to.
Dullens.
Dullens? That's a word. That's a word. Google it. Actually, please don't. Let's see here. What about Costco cake, though? Costco cake.
Costco cake is
that's its own
good.
thing. That's
Costco cake is good, but if I had to choose, like if both were in front of me, I would go for the pie.
all right. Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right. Let's see here. I guess if my easy cheesecake is considered a pie, I would also go with pie, but it would be that particular pie with strawberries on it. Oh, birthday festival's coming. Okay, so Justin D. Myers asks, how did you come to Christ? In a nutshell, it doesn't have to be a big old story. I don't know that you have like a big old story.
I don't. When I was 5. No, honestly, I have been following Christ for the majority of my life. I mean, for as long as I can remember. I do actually have this little memory of when I was very young, younger than 8, I know for sure, at a summer VBS it wasn't even our own home church. It was a nearby church from where we lived. And I remember going forward when they asked if anybody wants to ask Jesus into their heart. And so I don't know if that's when the occasion was, but I wonder if that was significant because I remember it, because I don't have a good memory. But since then, I mean, I feel like there have been different periods in my life where I have grown a lot. College certainly comes to mind in understanding so much more the meaning of grace. But even beyond that, after getting married, as Paeter has indirectly challenged me because he is so gracious. And yeah, I came from, I would say, pretty, at least in my mind, pretty legalistic background. But I'm also a rule follower. So that's what I tend towards anyway. And so,
And am I a rule breaker?
Yes.
Yeah, I am. I am.
Yes.
Don't put me in a box.
Yes. So, so I really feel like as I've grown in life, it's just seeing a lot of God's grace for me, and a lot of that's been shown through Paeter. So,
Let's see. There's a question here that I actually had written next, but I want to come back around to it because I think it might be more natural to come to after talking about your job a little bit. Justice ACB has said, Paeter has stated on a few occasions that you don't particularly like your job. What's the job or field, if you prefer, and what do you like/dislike about it? And to tack onto this question, how have you avoided burning out? And yeah, and then I'll save these other two questions for after you comment on that a little bit.
okay. Yeah, I'm a pharmacist, and I can start with the things I don't like. Well, working in retail, I don't work in retail anymore in the your drugstores or grocery stores, pharmacies. But that's where I started, and that's where a lot of pharmacists start, at least. And I felt like I was thrown into this place that I didn't have training for. I had knowledge of the drugs and being a pharmacist, but I didn't know people were not nice. And I got I feel like just a big education on how mean people are. And so I am somebody who is deeply insecure and self-conscious to begin with. And so having people yelling, I mean, not usually yelling, but every once in a while, or just people getting upset with me or somebody else in our pharmacy, one of the technicians, I had a hard time handling that. And so, yeah, that is the main issue. But also with pharmacy and with medicine in general, I don't like gray areas. I like black and white. And with medicine, there's a lot of gray. And you'd think, because it's a lot of science, there is black and white there. And there may be some of that, but there is a lot of gray because everybody's body is different. Everybody's body and the way symptoms present, things happen, drugs react in their bodies, like everything, it's just going to be different. And so knowing what the right way to go is, there isn't necessarily always a right way. There's definitely isn't a right way for everybody. And so making decisions that I don't know what the outcome specifically is going to be of this, when you get into drug interactions and therapeutic duplications, the same type of medications, should they be on both or not? There's just a lot of gray. So yeah, those are the main things. But now I work and have worked for the past over 11 years, about 11 and a half years, worked at home for a mail order company. And that for a long time was a life changer for me because I didn't have to deal with people. With the angry people. And it wasn't just customers, it's also doctors' offices. And so I get it. We mess up and we make mistakes, but yelling at me is not going to help. So working at mail order has been a huge blessing and very helpful. And I love the flexibility of it. I can stop and I can do this in the middle of the day. I can stop work and come record on a podcast. And there is some sense of I get satisfaction from I've got these tasks I've got to complete and I can get those done. And at the end of the day, I can clock off and not think about it for the most part. And so when you ask about burnout, I feel like, I don't know, I haven't thought about burnout. I don't really feel like I've come close to that. I think it's because of those things. Like I can work at home and it's flexible, and I can just forget about work when I'm not working. It does take up a lot of time during the week and during the day, but then when I'm done, and I move on. And I feel like I'm able to do that a lot. So
Yeah. Okay, so Justice ACB asks, what are your biggest struggles living a Christian life in the modern age, and how do you overcome them? I think that you and I are probably both going to say that we're not in the position of, oh, we are overcomers and listen to our advice, but maybe...
But we are more than overcomers,
That's,
right?
well, that is true. That is true. I'm struggling to believe that.
Yeah.
But maybe, just share a significant struggle and how you have been facing that challenge.
Yeah. I hope I don't ramble too much. I feel like I am not articulate like Paeter is, and so I can tend to say a lot of words, but I'm never sure if I'm making a point or if I'm just going off topic. So, well, one thing, because part of that question, I think it was that question, he also gave his example of like struggling to talk to non-believers.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I didn't read the whole question, but you're right. That was part of the original question.
About his faith. And so, yes, I have struggled off and on all of my life, I feel like, with sharing my faith with non-believers, and have felt guilty off and on about not being more proactive in that, I guess. But I think, and I don't know if I'm settled on this or if I'm just trying to make myself not feel guilty about it. I don't know. But that I'm just, going, God has wired us all differently, and we have our lives that we're living. And I think I want to pursue Jesus and grow in my walk with him. And out of that, whoever I come into contact with, I'm hoping will see the love of Christ just in how I interact with them. I don't feel like I have to be proactive with every conversation that I have with people. And again, I am like, I mentioned that I'm insecure and self-conscious. I am, and I think because of my beginning in pharmacy, I'm afraid of people. And so I have trouble reaching out even to friends. And let alone people I don't know. I take almost a daily walk around our neighborhood, and I'm much more comfortable now, but I made this goal of I'm just going to wave to people who walk by, who drive by. And that was a big deal for me.
Me too.
Where it seems like, why is that a big deal? But I'm just so self-conscious. I don't want people looking at me or thinking I wave weird, or I don't know, like, whatever it is. And so but if I turn it around and make it not about me, I've heard in the last several years at our church just this phrasing about when we reach out to people, it can be because we want to show them that Jesus sees them and cares for them. And so even though this is such a small thing, maybe in my wave and smile, I can say, hey, somebody sees you and cares about you. And I have no idea. Like I said, it feels like such a small thing, but it's big to me because I'm scared of people. And also, so that's one thing. I think that was just one thing. Maybe that was more. But, with my job, when I started in retail or when I started with mail order, I did not have to deal with anything on the phones at all. But right after we moved to our house almost 5 years ago, about a month later, they gave all the work at home people phones and trained us on taking phone shifts. So we have to we get scheduled for a certain period of time where we have to sit on the phone like those AT&T operators you see and wait for incoming calls, or if the work we're doing, if there's any phone call that needs to be made to a patient or a prescriber, then we have to make the phone call. Where it used to be, we just send that off to somebody else who does the phone calls. And so that started because I had been out of phone calls. Well, first of all, I hate talking on the phone.
Which is amazing because the first year that we were quote unquote dating was long distance and almost entirely on the phone. I mean, the most meaningful conversations. We did email too, but that's really something.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then being away from retail and having to deal with any kind of people for so long, I became even more fearful because all I remembered is the angry people. I don't remember so much the people who were pleasant and kind and gave us smiles and compliments. And so I was very fearful that the phone calls I would get or have to make, I would get yelled at. And it made me want to go and hide. And so that kind of started this downward spiral, I would say, emotionally, of really questioning God and where he, not his existence, but what is he doing in my life? And how can this be a good thing? And why is he letting me struggle so much? And over the years, so that was, like I said, almost 5 years ago. And over the years, it was not getting better. It was not changing. I know Paeter and I both prayed that, if there is something that he could do that would make money for us, then bring it to us and let's pursue that. But there has been nothing. It's been, as Paeter likes to say, it's been crickets. It feels like from God. And so just struggling through my circumstances of all of a sudden having to deal with people again and not knowing what I would get on the phone. And then at the same time, I was in my early 40s. And so processing through midlife, I don't know, I guess, I get it now why people go through midlife crises. I don't know why it happens, but I think, it's a thing because it must be common that you just start questioning your life. What have you done with your life? What's your purpose in life? For me, it wasn't as much as what have I done, because again, I don't really have goals or bucket lists of things I want to accomplish. But it's more like, what is my purpose? I hate my job. I feel so insecure and I'm failing everybody in my life. And so it's just, it has been, the last several years have been a really tough time for me. I'm kind of the personality where even if I'm feeling like that emotionally, I can shove it away, I can stuff it away and get stuff done. I'm a doer. I get things done. I accomplish things, and so people may not know how I'm feeling deeply, because I go and I do, and I continue on in the things that I'm doing. But I think it was kind of coming and going in waves in the last several years as far as how bad it was. But then last summer, I applied for a job that Paeter and I both thought sounded like it would be a really good fit for me, and I wouldn't have to deal with people except for my coworkers, which is fine. But I didn't get the job. And so again, I was just like, Lord, what are you doing? And so finally, I felt like I've been trying to study scripture. I've been trying to go to Bible study. I've been going to church. I've been processing with Paeter and a couple other friends. And I didn't feel like I was getting answers or truly getting better. And so finally in September, I let Paeter make a phone call for me to find a counselor for me to start going to for depression. And between her and then I went to my doctor and got some medication, and I've been on medication for the past several months, and it's made such a difference. I I feel like, as a friend of mine said, my profession is validated because drugs can make such a difference in your life. Not just like I think of medication as such a physical thing, and when it's my emotions that are unhealthy and out of whack, like it feels like, how can a medication make that better? But it does. And I in theory, I know it's all chemistry in your head that's affecting your emotions. So I know some of the science behind that. But at the same time, my emotions, I'm like, how is that? That's not really possible. And so it's made such a difference in my day-to-day life. I don't feel so scared of people, so scared of failure. And yeah, so it's been better.
It's been amazing.
Few months.
Yeah, you guys need to know that just as her husband, it's been just amazing to see her smile more. I love her smile, and I love seeing it as much more often as I have been in the last few months. It's been wonderful. So many things have just been wonderful. It's not like it's not like our marriage was in this bad place while she was going through that, which is in retrospect kind of amazing. But it is just so satisfying as her husband to see her smiling and happy and content so much more often, even though the struggle is still real. It's not taken her out of the need to enter into that struggle. And so that kind of leads into this question from Justice ACB. What's your favorite Bible verse, story, or parable that gives you hope on a bad day? And as I said before we recorded, that doesn't have to really be something that specific if you don't want. But, as you said, you've not just been you're like, well, let's just throw some drugs at this. That a significant part of this battle has been Scripture, and counsel from a good Christian counselor who's coming at it from that worldview. And so, what maybe more broadly would be a truth or some truths that God's revealed in Scripture that have been relevant to you and have been kind of a tool in your tool belt in this battle?
I think I think the main answer is I don't know.
That's fine.
But the Psalms have really helped because they show so much emotion, and there are some specific Psalms. I think one of them is Psalm 13 that really just cry out to God. And learning about lament the past several years, our worship pastor Jessica really has led us in growing in our understanding of lament, and just really feel like that's been missing from Christian teaching, I think, a lot. And so just growing in my understanding of lament and just crying out to God with whatever is going on in my mind and in my life. And the Psalms, some of the Psalms really express that. But also just kind of in this, in part, I've been like, I don't know, God, I don't understand. Help me to understand. And something I looked up again, one Psalm 25, a couple verses in there, like the whole Psalm is good, but a couple verses in there really kind of were my prayer for a while. And that's Psalm 25, verses 4 and 5, that are, make me to know your ways, O Yahweh. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me. For you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long. And so I felt like he's not changing our circumstances. He's not changing my circumstances. So help me understand, God, you and your way, and and teach me. Teach me, like, help me understand what my purpose is, just kind of processing through the purpose of humans on earth, the purpose of, and then my specific purpose. I still don't have an answer specifically beyond, our engagement with God and sharing him with others. Our relationship with God and our relationship with others. Me specifically, I still don't know, because I want to be unique and different from other people. And so what's my unique purpose?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. But trying to find contentment in continuing to study scripture. I was so happy that our church decided to read through the Bible in a year, and I was just ready to dig in and see the overarching, like, story of the Bible again, and just really try and pay attention from a different perspective about just seeing what scripture is about, and teaching me, and how people in the Bible interact with God. And there's one other in the Psalms, and I think in Isaiah too, when there's a few times God says, do not fear, I am with you. And so I felt like there's something about that. I was so fearful, and I think that's my biggest struggle, is being fearful of people and failure. So when he says, don't fear, these things are going to be happening to you, he says, no, do not fear, I am with you. And so there's something in that. Somehow I'm supposed to find, it feels like, comfort in the fact that he is with me. And I don't yet know or understand why that works, or if that works, but that's kind of what I'm wanting to see more of. So this may be a long journey, and it is a long journey, and maybe it's more about the journey. But what I want is to continue seeking him and growing in knowing him and knowing myself. And maybe at the end of my life, I'll be like, oh, okay, now I get it. I don't know. Maybe not until the next life, but...
Well, I don't want to take up much more of your time, but I wanted to give plenty of breathing room for that side of what we were going to talk about. But we can probably afford to be shorter on some of these other ones. Justin D. Myers, from my wife, he says, what is it like for you to be the breadwinner of the house, and how does that affect your relationship?
Yeah, I was trying to think about that question because it's been this way since we got married.
Yeah.
And so
even when I was the worship pastor at our church for those 2 years,
yeah,
and it was a full-time position, you were still making way more, and I don't think we could have had our standard of living on my paycheck alone, right?
Probably not. But I think I was working maybe fewer hours at that time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
is that something you got to attend to?
no, it's just Titus
Oh,
on
okay.
his
All right.
screens.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, what?
No. What's it
breadwinner.
like being the breadwinner? What's that like? How does it affect our relationship?
Yeah, I feel like maybe part of it has been like the way I think of our money is that it's ours. No matter who brings the money in, it's ours. It's both of ours. We are a unit. And so I never think of it as my money, and maybe that helps. I feel like we work together. I mean, I think part of it works because of that, maybe that attitude, but also because Paeter and I worked together on the budget. Paeter's not a numbers guy, in case you don't know that. He doesn't want to have anything to do with numbers.
I'm just terrible.
And I love numbers. So I'm happy to take care of the finances and the budget and the bills and stuff. But at the same time, I want him to be a part of that, not just to know where our money's going and what the bills are like or whatever, but because of our giving, I want him to have a say and to direct our and be on the same page of where our giving is and how much, and then also how much into which budget category. So I think just in that communication, that's been helpful too.
How have you balanced career and motherhood? This is from Justice ACB. He says, obviously Paeter's around the house a lot, but there are surely issues with balancing motherhood and work.
Yeah, it's easier now that the boys are older and more self-sufficient.
Yeah, they are in 5th and 8th grade now.
Yeah. But yeah, Paeter does a lot. He does so much of he practically does all of like the shuttling around wherever they need to go, school, to school, from school, because they aren't in I don't know. Yes, we just have to take them to and from school. I was going to talk about busing, but you don't need to know all those details. And extracurricular activities, he does most of that, and appointments, and he also does laundry and dishes and cooking, and pool stuff, like just he does so much. And
I'm so glad you see it that way. I don't see it that way.
That I feel like that makes it a lot easier as well. But yeah, it hasn't always been easy. I have mom guilt about working. Like I said, it's easier now that they're older, but especially when they were younger, I didn't want to work, and especially not going to a job I didn't like. And I didn't want to be away from my little boys. But at the same time, I also recognize Paeter and I would both say we are not kid people. But it took me a while to realize that for myself, about myself. Because I knew I wanted to be a mom. I mean, people get married and they have kids, and that's what they do. And I knew I wanted a family, but I didn't realize that I'm. Yeah, so I think it's good that I'm working.
So in one sense, it sounds like it was kind of a grass is always greener thing, where like
Yeah.
you thought you really wanted that, and you
Yes.
thought you wanted what you were missing, but at some point you realized,
It might be a good thing that I'm out of the house, because I would totally be going crazy, because I'm not a crafty person. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. I don't want to get down and play little kid games or entertain them or whatever. So, yeah, I think there's been some of that back and forth, but I feel like Paeter and I found a good balance in that. So,
okay, so now getting into just our marriage a little bit and just a touch of parenting stuff. Dan XL asks, hello there, and thank you for doing this. Have you and Paeter ever played any video games together? I played It Takes Two with my fiance, and we had a blast together. So video games, you and I have played together. Do you remember the names? It's been a small number.
I remember Champions of North.
Oh, nice. Nice. I went for it, but she got it before I pulled it down. That's a Diablo clone.
That's what I remember.
Yes, and that was before we had kids.
Yes, and that was fun.
And we played that all the way to the end.
Yes, because because Paeter did most of the work in killing all the bad things.
Oh, that's not true. I definitely like the shopping more than you did, which I thought was really ironic.
You guys, I don't know how you can do all the shopping. Please, that's so boring.
The upgrading of equipment.
Just give me what I need to go out and fight these things. It's just so unnecessary. It is ironic, though, because in real life, I'm the shopper.
Yes. But we haven't really played games together, not regularly at all,
No.
since then.
No.
And I think it's hard to find a good fit for what we both are
Yes.
going to like. I've tried a few times.
If you guys don't know, Paeter and I are almost complete opposites. So whereas I'm gonna like the puzzles, the figuring out, the analytical stuff, he wants what? More adventure.
I
and-
guess,
and
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't like abstract puzzles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would rather be in an environment and like, okay, I'm in this cave and there's these things. How can I make, good of this situation or whatever? But
Yeah.
even that I don't like a ton of. But if you do like abstract stuff, yeah. But we don't
Yeah.
need to talk about my interests.
Well, yeah, I don't know. So we haven't played much together because it's hard for us to find something we both enjoy.
Yeah. And when, time is more precious when you have kids and when you're at this stage in your life. And then also over the years, we've each figured out things that we like that refresh and recharge us at the end of a work day.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I'm having a good moment, I will come and bring something that I'm doing to sit with her, like with a Vita, or I'll use a tablet and read some comics. But that is the exception to the rule. Most times we are recharging doing different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But I mean, it's fun when I have the live streams and you guys, or the charity live streams, and you guys donate enough to get Holly to come on as one of the rewards. Those are always fun, and I like watching those, going back to those. But yeah, not really video gaming together. Justice ACB asks, what attracted you to Paeter at first, and what keeps you around? Hoping this one embarrasses him. I don't think it's going to.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it took me a while to come around. When I first met Paeter, he was young and crazy, and so I didn't really think of him romantically at first. But then he gave me a note, and was kind of expressing wanting to get to know me more. And so, yeah, we lived across the country from each other, and we started talking on the phone.
Yeah,
a
long
lot.
story short, you can find this on the YouTube channel if you look for it. Or the play, it's in the playlist, I think, Get to Know Paeter or something like that, and you'll see a thumbnail with me and my wife on it, or I'll mention my wife in the title of the video. Anyway, I've told the whole story before. Long story short, we met as part of a singing organization that you audition in all parts of the U.S. They bring you together for a rehearsal camp, and then you go on a tour together, then you go back to your homes and probably never see each other again. That's the situation that we met each other in.
Yeah, so I lived in North Carolina, he lived here in Arizona, and so we talked on the phone.
So was it something during that time that...
It was, yes. It was during that time.
Getting to know me?
Yes. What I saw in Paeter, well, part of it was, and I used to say he needs to like write a book on dating because he did it so well. Part of it was just his pursuit of me and his initiating with me, but also just sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yes, so what I saw, because our relationship was a lot on the phone, all we could do was talk. And what I saw in him, even though in some ways he felt so young because of his crazy antics.
I would have been 21 or 22 at the time.
Yeah. And I'm 3 years older than him. And so in some ways, like in college and out of college feels like kind of a big age difference.
Mm-hmm.
But what I saw was this maturity in him, and a spiritual maturity that kind of made me want to know more and want to hear more about him and his perspective on life. And so what kind of attracted me was his maturity, even though that's not what comes across at first a lot of times. Paeter is a very deep person, but what he can show, especially way back then, is just this kind of young, like kooky, like I'm gonna do weird things. And of course I was being insecure and caring a lot what people think about me. I was like, I can't do crazy things. I'm too cool for that. Well, I'm not cool, but I hoped I was. So anyway, yeah, so I just saw Paeter's maturity, his spiritual maturity, and then also his grace for me. Those were the things. Oh, and communication. I grew up in a family that does not talk. Sometimes you can put a period at the end of that, but doesn't talk about deep things a lot. We loved each other. We get along as the average family does. There wasn't, every family has dysfunction, but my parents were and are still married and still love each other. And there's no estrangement currently with anybody.
But there's a good amount of sweeping under the rug when it comes to conflict.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
We avoid conflict, and so I didn't know how to communicate, and didn't know that I didn't know how to communicate, and so, Paeter kind of pulled things out of me because he's a communicator. So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
I think so. And what keeps you around? Well, I think your commitment to a godly marriage keeps you around. Or maybe better stated, what keeps things working well, maybe, or what still, if I can say this without like, anyway, it's going to be weird. What are you still attracted to about me, I guess, or yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is a lot about your commitment. It's not like, I know Paeter has talked about what love is and what it isn't, I mean, yes, you can be in love and have these feelings of what we call love, but it really is a choice and a commitment. There probably maybe the roughest time I feel like in our marriage was when right after Titus was born.
Yeah.
And there were times when I was like, this is just too hard. I wanted to emotionally pull away, and did to some extent. But that commitment of it's not an option to walk away from this marriage. I'm going to choose. Eventually, I came around to, and sometimes it was, I can think both of these things in the same day. Like, I can't do this. Okay, I'm going to do this. Like, just choosing the commitment and sticking to that. It takes both people to commit. It takes both people to have grace for each other, to communicate with each other. I think part of the both of us being so opposite each other, we've had to learn a lot from each other even. And so I think, yeah, it's the commitment. I think, I can't remember if this was part of this question or if it was a different question, but since almost the beginning of our marriage, we've had a weekly lunch date.
Yeah.
That we started, and Paeter had to remind me of this, but we started by going through some like foundational Christian books, like just like talking about your faith and what do you believe and why do you believe that?
Issues of doctrine and stuff. We kind of wanted to be on this, even though we'd done a lot of talking about things that we believed, of course, before we were married.
Yeah.
We also, on a finer point level, I think, wanted to explore various issues of doctrine and positions on things and stuff and kind of lay a foundation, as well as I think we would alternate between books that had that kind of focus and then books that had a marital focus from a Christian perspective.
Yeah, we did some marriage books too. And like, a lot of marriage books are like, the men are like this and the women are like this. And we're like, no, actually, you're more like a woman and I'm more like a man.
Yeah.
But talking about that is, and knowing that about each other, that makes a big difference. I want to mention that first book, the R.C. Sproul.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think this was the first one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
The first book
one of the first on doctrine, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that we went through is R.C. Sproul book, Essential Truths of the Christian Faith. And it has super short, like 2-page chapters, and then some Bible passages, and just talking about what each chapter said. And I think it took a while for us to get through it, but it was so good for us to do that.
Yeah. And we didn't even agree with everything that Sproul said.
No.
I think there was maybe a week where we were persuaded that infant baptism was, the most sensible position, but I don't think that lasted longer than it didn't last very long. But he really gets into the finer point, and so, but yeah, that we didn't agree with him on everything, but it was the topics he was, and well, it's largely great. There's very little in here that we would like, not necessarily. I think most of it we're like, yeah, this is really solid stuff, and the best thing it did, I think, was give us this reason, this catalyst for talking about these things.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And that really, I'll credit some questions when we get around to them, but that really kind of answers some other questions from some other folks. But let's see here. Oh yeah, okay. Francisco Ruiz says, thank you for being the beating heart of CGC/SBP. What has been the most unexpected way Paeter has changed since marrying him, especially? And what has been the most unexpected way you have changed since marrying Paeter?
Yeah, I don't know about unexpected. I don't know if I had expectations about changing.
Yeah.
But I think one way that both of us have changed, well, I know one way that both of us have changed over the years is just in our serving each other. With our commitment and just seeing how each other gives grace and forgiveness and compromises. It's not always easy, but I think it's necessary to keep going. I think we've both, it's more natural to think of each other in what we're doing. We still don't always.
Than it had been.
Than it had been, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're still both selfish people.
Yeah.
And want to do our own things, and we get
Me especially.
whatever. And we get grumpy. You just vocalize it more. I just grump to myself. But I think in just the way that we can, serve each other and do, think of each other in our daily lives. I think that's been helpful, and
I mostly just want to spotlight this question, even though I feel like it's already been answered. But Dan XL asked, how do you and Paeter manage to keep Christ at the center of your marriage? And then asked about different things like praying together, reading the Bible together, devotionals maybe that you do together. I'm getting married in March 2023, and I would love some advice in this area from both of you. And then Justice ACB also asked, what are your tips on having a long and successful marriage? Congrats on the milestone anniversary. And I think probably we've covered a number of those things. Some of those traditional things that you would often think of, we don't do, and I it's not that I feel content that that's the case. We don't regularly pray together, like a daily or a weekly or something like that. That tends to happen, I think, more organically when there's like something that we realize we're facing and we feel, unfortunately we wait until these kinds of moments where like we're at the end of our rope, instead of, praying together in other circumstances. We do as a family pray together daily, and I try to keep that from being a rote prayer, but to incorporate into that prayer at meal times different things that we're thinking about that are relevant to our day, that we can thank God for about our church or different blessings of our circumstances and stuff. But
we pray with each of the boys in the morning and at bedtime.
Yeah, we pray with them before we head out to school, and then whichever one of us is tucking them in, we kind of take turns there. Then we're praying with them. We don't read the Bible together. But we have these lunches once a week, that Holly mentioned, used to be through books, but for a long time now, more than half of our marriage, I feel like that was maybe the first 5-8 years or something. Mm-hmm. But since then, we just have lunches, and it's fairly natural for us to just kind of get into the deeper things of life, and a number of times that will involve things related to faith and just things that we're wondering about or struggling with or whatever. And so, and then separately, we're each reading and studying the Bible, and that's informing the kinds of things that we, talk about. But yeah, other than those supplementary comments, I feel like, we kind of, unless there's something else you would want to add.
Just to, I know I mentioned these words and I keep mentioning them, but the tips on marriage, I just feel like communication is such a big thing.
And learning how to communicate, like that premarital counseling that we had, where we were knee to knee and trained to kind of like listen to each other and repeat I highly recommend premarital counseling of the type that will give you those tools, because I still look back on those, not just for our marriage, but just for like learning to listen to people and not just hearing their tone, but actually listening to the words they're saying and not putting in my head things in what they're saying that they're not actually saying, but listen to what they're actually, like principles of communication. What else?
Just being the first to admit wrong, and also acknowledge the other person's hurt.
Yeah.
Whether you said something you shouldn't have said out of anger or whatever it was, or you inadvertently hurt them and you're like, why are you hurt about that? Just acknowledge that they are hurt and apologize for that. That's something that Paeter has shown me so much, just coming first to apologize and admitting, because in any relationship, both people are somewhat in the wrong, most likely.
And you're feeling like the other person is 99% at
Right.
fault and you're 1%.
But no matter if you really are the 1%, coming first and admitting this is the part that I thought or did wrong or said wrong or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's huge.
Just swallowing your pride, being humble to come to that person and ask for forgiveness for that. It's so disarming. I can speak from experience because Paeter has done that for me. It just melts me and is like, ugh, you're right. I was wrong too. And I'm sorry, So it's so helpful.
Now, just brief touching on parenting. Justice ACB asks for both of us, any tips for a young couple looking to start having kids in the next couple of years? See if you might get a dog first. No. I jokingly say that I like dogs, Holly likes cats, so we just had a kid. But
yeah,
anyway.
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But he likes to say that. Yeah, watch out. It's going to change your life. And for so much good. But also, like, I thought, oh man, I was not ready for the love that I had for our first boy, and in both boys now, but it really threw me for a loop. It was this instinctual love, like intense love for my first baby. When he came out, it was almost immediate when he was born. And I never thought anything could like trump my love for Paeter. But then all of a sudden there was this boy, this little kid. And I was like, I've got to protect him and take him and love him and do everything for him. And he is my life. And I would have never articulated that, but that's kind of the intense feelings I was having. And I mean, this was not good, but I really kind of put Paeter in a back seat when Asher was born. And so just, I think, kids are hard, but kids are totally worth it. It's amazing to see this little person that you created together with God, of course, but you came together and created this little person. And to have that person, you named them, you gave them a name, and they're growing up in front of you. It's amazing, but it's so hard and so exhausting. And you got to have so much grace for each other in that. And just know that it's going to change your life. Your life is going to look different, and you're not going to have time for anything. And you feel like you're never going to have time for anything that you want to do ever again.
And I think statistically that's more true for women, especially early on, especially if you're breastfeeding, but even if you're not, you're pumping and, and I think for husbands, brace yourself for your wife to, put you on the back burner to a degree. And just know that is likely to happen, at least for a time. And I think that, and then realize that you'll need to have conversations and be open about how you are feeling, so that, because I think early on, the sensible instinct is to be, listen, whatever the mom needs to help her through this, and to, and just accept that things are going to be different in your marriage for who knows how long, but don't let anything fester in you that is going to make you bitter or jaded or angry or resentful toward your wife, and be prepared for difficult conversations about how you're feeling and how you're and things going on in the marriage, and it's like, and to admit, like when I remember saying at times, this is how I feel, and I'm wanting this or whatever, and knowing, and really I think I remember acknowledging a few times, I don't have any right to ask this. I don't feel like I'm in the right, but I just want to put on the table how I'm feeling, and then just let us kind of look at that. And I'm not here to demand anything, but I just want to share that, man, this is hard right now. Man, this is suddenly like bringing back emotions and memories I'd forgotten all about. But for me, having kids, this didn't actually happen for me until Titus, our youngest, was at least 2 or 3 years old. But there came a point where I needed to have a good grip and a good foundation in God's grace that I didn't truly have, even though I'd been at a church for many years that really emphasized grace. Because I realized, I saw my selfishness. When your time gets stripped away and your energy gets stripped away and you can't do the things that you want to do and you're not getting from life what you want to get because all this crap is going on that you can't control and that takes so much from you and is changing your life, then you, at least in my case, I wanted to hold on to being the good guy. I wanted to not be the one who was taking initiative in confessing and I got, I think I was doing well at that for a while, but there was also some resentment building up about that, about being the one that was taking initiative in confessing. And so, but I'll always be grateful for that time in my life because it took me to a breaking point where I was so angry and so frustrated with life. But because of God's grace and knowing that my worth was not affected by my depravity, I was able to take an honest look at myself. I remember I journaled about this once, and it was like seeing for the first time, not comparing myself to so-and-so that's easy to compare myself to, but comparing myself to Jesus and realizing, oh my gosh, I am so much more sinful. The sin is so much more pervasive in every corner of my life, my thought life, my actions, everything, than I ever really admitted, even when before I was trying to look and acknowledge the sin in my life. It was coming to the breaking point where I realized, God, I'm broken because I don't know what to do. I'm so selfish and I don't want to give up. I'm clinging to these things that I want. But really, I need to give up some of these things and be a better husband and be a better father than I'm being, rather than hanging on to the idea of being the victim and being the one that's being wronged, So I would say brace for something maybe like that because becoming a parent will stretch you because of the things involved in being a parent. And because of what it will do to your marriage to have kids, you'll be taken probably to the breaking point. And if you're not, then your marriage might be falling apart without you realizing it. Honestly, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there are some people out there that, boy, this is just the easiest time of life. But
wait.
No, I'm not going to move on.
Okay,
I'm not going to move on. I just want to finish this sentence.
Okay, good.
But brace yourself for a breaking point, and maybe more than one, that you'll look back on as very significant in your life and very good for your life if you are willing to be broken and rely on God's grace and who God says you are, rather than trying to conjure who you are based on this image you want to believe is true of yourself.
Yeah, no, just in the same way, at least for me, I can speak to my experience with having babies. You feel like, and little kids even, even still with kids, like you feel like this baby is so needy all the time, especially, the younger they are, the more needy they are because the more they need you to do everything for them. And then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but then also you have this husband who is needy and has his things that need to be met too. And so so there can be some resentment that builds up because you're like, this person is so needy and this person is so needy and I don't have time for all this and I'm exhausted. And I just also with Titus, after Titus was born, it took him over a year to sleep through the night. And this was not a good time in our marriage. We slept apart in 2 different beds for that year.
And for a while, the rationalization was reasonable.
Yeah.
Because I
felt it was
I was
reasonable.
substitute teaching and needed to be able to sleep on the days that I was going to be subbing. And so, with her waking up and Titus waking up and stuff like that, I needed to have a good night of sleep because subbing just took a lot out of me. But was it for almost a year, over a year? What was it?
It was about a year.
That I was sleeping in the guest room.
Yeah.
And
Titus was sleeping in a bassinet in our bedroom and then a little porta-crib or whatever.
yeah. And I really wanted him to just learn to self-soothe and stuff like that. But that was, a lot of that was driven from my own selfishness, I have to acknowledge. But yeah, I mean,
And I was nursing and I don't know if you call it selfish or not, but I didn't want to give up that time with my babies. I liked nursing. I liked having that time with them. So even middle of the night feedings, I didn't want to give those up, even though I was exhausted. And me being tired is not a good thing. I am quick to get grumpy. And so, yeah, that was a tough time. And so I just felt like this baby's needy, this husband's needy, and I'm exhausted all the time. I'm working. Thankfully, I was working from home at that time, but I'm working and I'm not sleeping through the night because my baby's not sleeping through the night, and that makes such a big difference. And so just recognizing if your husband comes to you and just wants to express something, man, I'm not an explosive person, and so I would stuff, but I would get all defensive. Like, I want to he would come and I want to tell you these things, but I know my reaction is defensiveness, and I want to be like, well, you think you're having it hard.
which would have been justified for you to say.
But no, but if I step away and let my emotions calm down, the vast majority of time I can come back and be like, you're right. I understand. Even though I probably didn't express that at that time because I'm still learning to communicate. But after my emotions calm down, then I can rationalize a bit better. But I just want to say to the husbands out there, especially if your wife is nursing the baby, like, just anything that you can do or say to acknowledge that you're thinking of her, you're giving for her, you're getting things done for her. Whatever that is so helpful, and letting her sleep when it's possible, as much as possible, especially if the baby's not sleeping through the night and she's the one getting up, or just taking turns, changing diapers, doing laundry, whatever it takes. That's so helpful.
Yeah, so have fun with that, Justice. Well, we have gone way over what I thought, and so I know this is taking a ton out of your work day.
I just feel bad for everybody having to listen.
No, oh my gosh. I was like, you said you're not articulate, but I was listening. I was like, man, she's saying ums and uhs less than I do, I think, and like she's doing an amazing job.
I feel like I just say a bunch of words and then Paeter makes sense of those words.
Well,
that's what I always feel like.
I don't know.
happens.
Right now, you've been really articulate, so it's been wonderful.
Thank you.
And so this was a real gift. All the stuff that we touched on, and I didn't know it was going to end up being quite as heavy as it was and as deep as it was. It was. So thank you for the gift of that. And
well, if there's any I was thinking earlier today, like, if I'm not explaining myself very well or whatever, if people have follow-up questions, that we can, I don't know, either come back on or can, email.
Yeah, email me, Paeter @spiritblade.com, and I can, at the very least, if we're not able to schedule another one of these, soon to follow up in that way, give me your questions for clarification or whatever. I will connect with her and paraphrase her response sometime on the podcast. But okay, so finally here, Gabriel Stinson says, "What is your name? What is your quest? What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Holly had to tell me what this reference was because I really grew up hating Monty Python and the Holy Grail with Search for the Holy, whatever it's called, because it had been quoted to me in pieces over years, so that by the time I actually sat down and watched it, I was like, I've heard every single one of these jokes. None of these are new. So that was really disappointing. But Gabriel goes on to say, I honestly have no questions. The only thing I want to say is thank you. Behind every good man is a great woman. I am so thankful that God brought my wife and I together. Her love for God has helped in my walk with God. I can only guess that, Holly, you are also an inspiration to Paeter in this regard. That's certainly true, Gabriel. Holly, thank you for all you do for your husband and kids. And Justin D. Myers says, thank you for enabling Paeter. He's a blessing to all us Christian geeks. And finally, Dan XL says, this is not a question, but more so a thank you for making Christian Geek Central a possibility. Paeter has been able to reach thousands and thousands of people through his channel. If even one soul has been saved through his work, then it has all been worth it. Many seeds have also been planted, I'm sure. God bless you. So, thank you.
Thank
very
you,
much.
and you're welcome.
All right, you're free. We're done.
Yay! I am so sweaty.